My goal for this year is to become the UK's leading educator for Pilates. If you're going to employ anybody, they've got to believe in what you're doing. My mission is to change the way that wellness looks and do something that's never been done before. And if you're in, and we're going to go on this incredible journey together. I've had instructors come and leave me and open their own studios, and the first couple of studios that opened, it hurt, it felt personal. I flip it now, like, to be able to inspire somebody to go and open a business, like, that's incredible. My youngest, he's 6 months next week. He's been in board meetings. He's been on studio shoots. Having children doesn't stop me achieving my dreams. It's not one or the other. I think women absolutely can have everything, but at different times.
Welcome to the first episode of the podcast. I'm Shaun Taylor, founder of Loft 112 Media Production Company, and I'm really pleased and excited to introduce my first guest, which is Holly Essuman, founder of the Reformer Studio, wife and mother. And we're going to be talking to Holly about how she's grown a successful Reformer Pilates company in a very competitive market, and how she's done all that whilst balancing her personal life as well. So how are you and the family? You all good?
Yeah, just enjoying the chaos.
Yeah. What chaos you got now? Is Echo training for anything or?
No, Echo's at home, which is nice.
Good.
So I've got some help with bath and bed and a little bit more flexibility, because when he's in camp or training twice a day, I have the kids in the morning, then I go to work, then I have the kids in the evening, and then I go to bed. It gives me the freedom to come and do things like this, you know?
I'll be 100% honest with you. Starting a podcast, I was thinking, right, there's a few people I can ask to come on. I want my podcast to cut through all the noise, because it's going to be based around business and content and marketing and that kind of stuff, like standing out from the crowd. Everyone always has like challenges. Everyone always says, I can't do this for this reason. I haven't got enough time. I haven't got the equipment. I don't have the finances. I'm, a husband, a wife, a father, a mother. Like, you've been through it all. Do you know what I mean? It's like when it comes to like building a business and, predominantly on social media, you've been through it all. When we first spoke, you had one studio and you're saying to me, I'm going to open two and I'm going to franchise and have loads. And I can remember at the time thinking, yeah, we'll see. And you've done it. No, thank you. I've had so many people say that to me, and then life gets in the way and it doesn't happen. And that's including myself. So, you've done it, and you look at your life and what you got with, your family, your husband, what you've done with the studio. So I just think, if I'm going to start a podcast, I think this would be a great start, because I think people can learn from what you've achieved. And it's, it's one of those things where people go, well, if Holly can do it, well, there's challenges she's had. Why can't we? You're in an industry that is oversaturated and highly competitive. I know who you are. And I'm pretty sure that plenty of people who hopefully are going to be watching the podcast will know who you are. But I think one of the things that I'd really like to kind of go back to is like day one or minus day one or minus one is, how did, Reformer Pilates kind of come into your life? What was the start of that journey?
Back in my 20s, I had a job which took me all over the world. I used to look after ultra high net worth clients, from kind of Russian billionaires to famous artists, actors, athletes. I'd look after them and find kind of holiday rentals. So mainly in the Alps, ski chalets, but then also kind of Saint-Tropez, and then my work took me further afield. So my first ever sale, I remember, I just kind of got thrown into the job. Didn't even know how to BCC, didn't know how to create an invoice, didn't know how to PDF. I remember it taking me half a day to actually do this invoice. And my first sale was to a famous footballer and his wife, and they were going on their honeymoon, just the two of them and then their little daughter. So that was a kind of, okay, I've achieved this. This is cool. What's going to happen next? And with these clients, they are very specific. They know what they want. They know what they need. So I kind of had to go into these properties and know exactly where the plug socket was or the heat of the swimming pool. You'd get some really, really random requests. So any property on my books, I had to go in and make sure that it was suitable for my clients. So I was fortunate enough to travel and enjoy these luxuries. Probably looks a little bit fancier than it was. I was traveling on my own a lot, staying in these incredible properties. But when you're in a huge ski chalet on your own, I would literally just base myself in my bedroom. You know, I'm not walking around a big chalet on my own. So basically that work took me all over the world, and I was really into my health and my fitness. So wherever I kind of went, I would check into a gym or find a yoga studio, find a Pilates studio. And through that, I found Reformer Pilates. And so I just kind of, wherever I touched down, would always try and go and find a studio.
When we first spoke, I think when you first reached out, you had your one studio, which was the flagship one in the Lace Market, Nottingham. And you were just looking to open up your second one, which I think at the time you were planning for it to be in Derby. Mm-hmm. Things changed, and the second one obviously ended up in Loughborough. But it wasn't an exercise or a product that I was aware of. I'd heard of Pilates. I didn't know what Reform Pilates was. The carriages looked scary. So I think from my perception, you were very much ahead of the curve. Not a lot of people were aware of it. Definitely there wasn't a lot of businesses doing Reformer Pilates. So 7 years down the line, there's a lot of businesses now doing Reformer Pilates. I think you can't go on Instagram or TikTok or, Snapchat without seeing somebody either on a Reformer Pilates or carriage or running a business. So it's obviously a very competitive market now. So with your first studio, what did it actually look like in reality? I know obviously you've maybe got a brand, you got a look, but what was that first studio? How did you get to that kind of initial brand? How it would look, how it would feel, how it would sound?
So I wanted something sleek, minimalistic, kind of on trend, but what's on trend when you're creating your own trend, When we first started the website, the socials, everything was black and white. So it was very, I love black and white. I love black and white photography. I think it's very effective. Further down the line, we had to come away from that because every studio had its own story. So, one studio, fantastic. I'd have probably kept it black and white. So we had to transition. That's one of the transitions we had to do. But looking back 7 years ago, the Lace Market studio, we were originally in the basement. So we're not where we are now. We were in the basement. It had its own separate entrance, and you would walk down the steps, and it was just a beautiful sight. It was my favourite studio. In fact, the Lace Market is still my favourite studio. And I think, to kind of look back 7 years ago and say, what would I change? Well, absolutely nothing. I think, that was the very start of a brand, which I had no intention that it was going to ever get as big as now.
If you didn't think that was going to happen, how did that change? What was the goal, or, what was the catalyst for it growing from one studio to how many have you got now?
12 studios in total, 10 Reformer, and then 2 Wonder Chair, which was the new brand that I launched last year. So we launched the Lace Market, studio number 1, the flagship. And in my head, I just had a number of 5. No rhyme or reason, but I thought, you know what? 5 is a good amount to kind of be, do you know what? I've achieved this. I've gone from 1 to 2. I've grown it. And 5 sounds like a good number. So that was kind of what I had envisioned, 5 studios. Obviously we've doubled that now and more.
Yeah. quite a big difference, isn't it? And, with your studios as well, let's talk about where they are as well. It's not like you've just done your studios locally in Nottingham or Derby. Your studios are stretching across quite an area. So let's just talk through, what are the challenges been with that then? So going from maybe different cultures, different cities, different kind of communities.
So Nottingham's home for me. I went to university here. I was born in Queens. So I've always had a network here. I've always had a community. I've always known a lot of people. So it's never easy to launch a studio. And I am by no way an expert in launching studios, because every single unit, every single lease, every single landlord, every single property has its separate challenges. Not one is the same. You can't replicate it. You can't duplicate it. I think the challenges are creating the team and the hub and the culture. So we launched Birmingham 2 years ago, and it's an hour from Nottingham, and I had a really, really good team out there. The classes were fully booked. The classes were waitlisted. We could not keep up with demand. So from being based in the head office, you think that everything is running smoothly. What I didn't realise was if you don't have a manager or somebody there responsible, you're going to create separate culture, not in line with your brand, your mission, your values. And things might not be run how you want your business to be run. So that was my first kind of, okay, we need to look at this a little bit differently now. It's not as if I can nip in the car half an hour down the road to Derby or to Loughborough. It's a little bit further. Challenge number one was kind of how do we make this work? And at the minute we have regional managers in place. So we have regional managers, we have studio leads, and there's a whole infrastructure there to ensure that our staff are happy and that our clients are happy. So that would be kind of one huge challenge, which, you know, we've developed, and I wouldn't necessarily say we've overcome because we're learning every day and nobody has done what we have done before. So there's nothing that we can copy. We're leading the way. So you're going to make some mistakes, or you're going to think, okay, maybe this could be done a little bit better, or, well, that was brilliant. We're going to, you know, that's the way it's going to go. In terms of kind of, you know, you've got different religions and different demographics. We have women's only classes across all of our studios, a lot in Birmingham. Sometimes we have men's only classes. But then the feedback from different studios or different people, men don't want to be put into into their own class. My mum asked me if I could deliver an over 60s class. Call it over 60s. It is what it says on the tin, right? Over 60. You lose more muscles in your legs once you get to a certain age. You need to start thinking about, you know, kind of different exercises, weights and things like that to maintain your muscle. Some women don't want to be put in a box. They don't want to be labelled that they're over 60. So you've got some people saying yes, and you've got some people saying no. So, okay, well, where's the happy medium? One of my clients, my elderly client, said, how about gentle reformer? Okay. So although you've got, you know, you do your market research and, you know, you could have 70% saying this, 30% saying that, you could ask the same group of people on a different day and they're going to tell you something different. It really is challenging to keep everybody happy and, to make sure that the wheels just keep turning, really.
You know, I suppose when you first started, you were a smaller team. So predominantly yourself and your instructors. And I think that's what everyone always looks at when they see Reform Pilates studios. They think of the instructors because they're the face of the business. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit different for you now then. So, you know, it's not just yourself and your instructors. From what I've seen, you've built a pretty good sizable team around you. Just talk us through that kind of organization. What does that kind of, if you're happy to say, what does that look like in order to, you know, have a brand that covers 12 studios across several cities? What type of, you know, roles have you got in that business then now?
This time last year, it was me and my assistant. I was doing all the marketing, all the scheduling, all the recruitment, all the training. I wrote a qualification in lockdown as well. So we have the School of Reform, the education arm of the business, scrubbing toilets, hiring a van to, you know, go and set up studios, everything. 16 weeks postpartum, I'm rocking up with a lady in a big white van to IKEA, lifting things I shouldn't have done after my second C-section. My biggest challenge that day was reversing the van out of IKEA. I actually had to get out of the van and ask someone to help me. Now we've got a huge team. I hired an MD last year, which was a game changer. I've got a marketing and brand manager. I've got an assistant marketing who helps with the content, the socials. We've got people and culture manager. We've got a scheduler. We've got a customer service lady. The list just goes on. I think we've got 12 salaried people in our head office at the minute. And we're constantly kind of looking at what other roles do we need to be able to facilitate the growth. Because although I wanted 5 and we've now got 12, we're not stopping there. But with that brings different challenges in terms of delegation, leadership, letting go of your baby. That's been my biggest challenge the past 12 months is I can't be in control of everything. I've got to let go. I've got to trust other people to love my brand as much as I do. And that is so difficult because actually nobody's going to work as hard as you do. Nobody's going to believe the vision as much as me. And so it's difficult, to kind of let some of that go.
The business that I've got is, there's other team members that I brought in, and they're great. And we love working together. From a personal point of view, again, it's hard to kind of let go of your baby, I think, at times, and to delegate and to pass things on because, people are always going to do things differently, which is quite often is a good thing in what's been my experience, to bring in fresh eyes, a fresh perspective on things. But the key thing that you said is getting those people to love your baby as much as you do, which is hard. So how do you, if you have been able to do it, how do you achieve that?
Gosh, I'm still learning, but I think, if you're going to employ anybody, they've got to believe in what you're doing and they've got to see where you want to go. Because for me, I was like, okay, this is me. This is what I'm doing. My mission is to kind of change the way that wellness looks and do something that's never been done before. And if you're in, and we're going to go on this incredible journey together. But I need you behind me. Not even behind me. I need you side by side. We're in this together and we're going to work hard and we're going to achieve great things. So I think, so long as you actually have people who do believe in your vision, because we're in such a fast-paced environment and industry, I don't have time to tell somebody, this is who we are and what we're doing. I feel if you've already come, you should have already researched. You should already have done classes within our studio. You already know, you'll come in and it'll be familiar. It'll be home. You recognize the smell, the faces and think, it's everything about the brand. If you're coming to that interview, then I don't need to kind of bring you on board if you're there and you're believing in it, Yeah.
And I think you picked up on things like, those that are coming into the business, they've already attended classes, they recognize when they walk in the studio, the sound, the smell. That's all part of building the brand. And not just for the benefit of your, potential, colleagues or, people who are going to work with you, but also for your clients, your service users. You're very particular with stuff. That's my experience with yourself. And, there's been times when maybe we've maybe clashed a little bit because I want to edit something in a certain way and, you've given feedback. I've always thought that kind of relationship works because I know where I stand with you. You'll tell me if something doesn't quite sit with you. And I say, okay, we'll go back to drawing board and we'll do it again. And we've moved on and it's really worked. So you're very intentional with what you do and what your standards and what you expect. Again, just going back to that kind of brand side of it, when you go into your studio, there's so many senses that you want to tick off. What you see, what you hear, I think is a massive one. What you smell. What was your thought process behind putting that together as well?
So I wanted to create an inner city sanctuary when I launched the Lace Market. I wanted to create a space where you could come for 50 minutes and focus on you, because everybody's busy. Everybody's giving energy out. And I do that 24/7. I've got a team to hype. But I think it's so important just to step back and, especially after COVID, to look after your own mental health. And, on the reformer, you can't think about your shopping list. You can't think of about, I've got to go home and do the laundry, or you have to focus on what you're doing. So I wanted to create this space that was just peaceful and serene, and you felt safe. That was my biggest thing, is to create a safe environment where everybody feels welcome. You know, you can walk into some places and you feel a bit kind of put off or out of place, or you don't look the part, or it's quite pretentious. So I wanted to create a safe space where everybody, whether, you know, whatever dress size you are, you know, whether you've got any disabilities, anything, we will cater and look after you and make you feel part of the family, and empowerment as well. So it was about the smell. It was about the walking in and just being like, okay, this is for me now. To take away the stresses of life, really. And with that, you know, you want nice neutral colours. You want the lights turned down low. You don't want to, I've learnt lessons along the way. So we've gone from, you know, some studios have been kind of ready to go. Some studios I have fully ripped out and renovated. I've got a thing about office ceilings. You know, those tiles that I hate them. Absolutely hate them. So one of my studios, I redid the whole ceiling. And I put spotlights in. The spotlights are nice because you can get them on dinners. But when you're lying down, looking up at the lights, no, it's too bright. I wish I'd never spent that money on lights. So if any studio owners or anybody's got an ambition to open a Pilates studio is listening to this, do not waste your money on dimmable lights. You know, get mood lighting around this place. We've introduced fairy lights into the studios. So it's, you know, these lessons you're learning.
There's definitely going to be people who either have a studio or looking to open up a reform Pilates who are going to listen to this. They're going to definitely listen to this. So, I mean, I think that definitely takes us to a next point. When you started 6-7 years ago, the market for reform Pilates was very different to what it is now. You can't walk, you know, down the street without coming across a reform Pilates studio. They're on every corner. This is a challenge, and we've seen it in other industries. I remember when I was coming through as a wedding photographer. You know, when I started, not so many. Then all of a sudden, there's loads of wedding photographers. I think when we were coming out of COVID, or coming through COVID, everyone was a personal trainer. And it seems like reform Pilates is what is happening now. So is it scary? Is there any point where you found it scary in regards to, wow, there's so many reform Pilates studios opening up? And if that was the challenge or the fear, how have you overcome that?
Never scary, because I've always believed in my brand. And your brand evolves over time. I've had instructors come and leave me and open their own studios. And, you know, the first couple of studios that opened, it hurt. It felt personal, you know. You put a lot into your staff. But it was never personal because, you know, I flip it now. Like, to be able to inspire somebody to go and open a business, like, that's incredible. You know, we have our education arm, the School of Reform. So in essence, we're creating our own competition. We're setting ourselves up, really. We've, last year we qualified just under 100 Reformer Pilates instructors. This year we're going to double that. You know, the demand is there. We've already had, just last weekend, one fully booked teacher training course. So we know we're creating our own competition. But we are market leaders. And I strongly believe in my brand and what we're delivering. So I think it's, you know, just believe in yourself and innovate rather than become a copycat. There's so many people looking to make money quick or, you know, to own a business because it looks cool. It's hard work. You make sacrifices. You know, and you look back now, I'm sure you do as well. There's things that you might have changed or you've learnt from. But, you know, I'd just say stay authentic to yourself and, you know, kind of, if you're opening a business, you're doing it for you and you're doing it because of what you actually believe in. I think you kind of said, you know, there are so many on different corners. It is a trend. It's become kind of TikTok crazy. And people are getting into it because they think it's cool, it's sexy, it's, you know, this and that. But unless you're passionate about it, you're not going to succeed.
There's so many challenges when opening up any business. Do you think there's anything that's really people underestimate when they're looking to start a wellness brand that you've come across?
When I started, the hardest thing was, and you'll probably laugh at this, but the hardest thing was educating people on what Reformer Pilates was. And then finding the instructors. There was no instructors. I had to train them myself. I had to handpick, a selection of people within the fitness industry and take them on my journey. Underestimating what goes into business, the hours.
Yeah.
And even
there's not enough of them, is there?
Even when you sleep, you dream it.
Yeah.
You wake up and, you can't get back to sleep because you're busy thinking. Even last night, I was awake at 3:30 waiting for my baby to wake up. He actually slept really well last night. But then I was thinking, okay, I'm on a podcast, getting quite hyped about it.
Good.
So you never switch off, and you've got to, again, it becomes an extension of you. You are your brand. So you can't switch it on, switch it off. It's there.
We've only really talked about the business side of it so far. We're not talked about, your personal and family life, but you've gone through all that. You've gone from going from one, taking the jump to a second one, working towards that figure of 5 that you're going to, 1 or 2 years later, you're up to 10. And at that point, Reformer Studio is a well-established brand in the Reformer Pilates and wellness industry. And you decide, okay, I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to add another brand to it. And that's the Wonder Studio.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you put yourself through starting another brand? What sparked that?
You've got to innovate, right? To stay ahead. You've just said there's so much competition. Okay, everybody's doing Reformer. What's next? You've got to stay ahead of the curve, right? So, it was about this time last year. I actually saw there was a Wonder Chair studio. It wasn't an exclusive chair studio. There was other, aspects to it in Zurich. And, I kind of feel everything that we've done has been a little bit of a jigsaw, and it's always been interconnected somehow. And the way that I saw this studio in Zurich was an old member of mine in Nottingham, and she was at university. She was a dancer, and then she relocated to Zurich and she became an instructor. And she was instructing outside of her corporate job, the Wonder Chair. And I was like, oh, that looks interesting. That looks good. That looks sexy. That looks challenging. What is this? So I jumped on a flight over to Zurich, went and met her, had a session or two. I think I was 6 months pregnant at the time. With my third baby.
Yeah, let's just get that. It's not 6 months pregnant with your first. This is your third. And how many studios at this point?
Yeah, 10 studios, I think. So jumped on a flight, went over, tried it out. It's like, okay, this is cool. This is something different. This is an extension to, it's not Reformer. It's more challenging. You're not lying down. You don't have the support. So for anybody who loves Pilates, they're going to love a bit of this. And I've seen it before. I've tried it before in an individual setting, or in it might be in a kind of rehab facility. So you might have a Reformer, a chair, a tower, a Cadillac, and you kind of go between them. But I've never been to a group Wonder Chair class. And so that is what I created.
I guess it would have been easier to take the Wonder Chair and incorporate it into the Reformer Studio. You've got the studios, you've got the space. What was the decision process to making it its own separate brand?
I wouldn't necessarily say I'd have the space, because every studio has been curated around the Reformers, and to bring in a chair, you're going to take the space up. It's going to take away the luxury feel of it. Going back, I always had this vision of kind of holistic, teamed with kind of dark, ferocious, sweaty. There was always going to be a subsection to the brand. Wasn't sure what it was going to be, and I'm not going to give away too much because there's things, there's other things, whether that's part of the Reformer Studio or other projects that I'm working on. but there was always going to be some some contrast. So with the Wonder Studio, the idea was we were just going to flip it. So all of our studios are kind of just off-white, very minimalistic. Wonder Studio is dark. It's kind of fierce. It's sexy. We've used decorative panels on the walls so that it's kind of like slate. It's a different vibe. Two different disciplines. And I think what we've done well is you've got your Reformer, you've got your Wonder. You can actually use your classes across both disciplines. So with the competition that's coming, you can go to a Reformer studio, but can you go to a Wonder studio? Well, the only Wonder studio is our Wonder studio at the minute. I anticipate in the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to get a lot of competition, especially we've just, again, written a Wonder Chair qualification. It's endorsed and we're actually launching our first teacher training in March this year. So again, we've done it to ourselves. We've innovated and then we're kind of throwing it out there to educate and again, to inspire and see what happens to the market.
With the Wonder Studio, that's your second baby. Or second business baby. What would you say was different launching that in comparison to when you originally launched the Reformer Studio? What was the vision different?
It was very different. But it was again going back to, okay, let's find my core team. Who is my core team that is going to champion this brand and take it on? And it was a little bit of a different setup this time in terms of when I launched the studio, I'd just turned 30. I had no responsibilities. I could work on that brand day and night. Fast forward to the Wonder Studio. I already mentioned I was 6 months pregnant when I went out to Zurich. The Wonder Studio launched when my youngest was 8 weeks old. So there was only so much that I was actually capable of doing in the midst of launching a brand, having a baby, and then getting back out to launch it. So there were definitely some physical aspects in the way that I couldn't do. I've still not personally taught a Wonder class. I can teach it. I am qualified myself, but I've not been out there to teach it. So I think I wouldn't necessarily say that there's been lessons because, as I touched on previously, every single studio brings different challenges and you learn, kind of launch on launch. But it was more for me being able to juggle my personal life, my marriage, my children, having a baby, growing a team, growing a new brand. That would be the challenges there.
I think as business owners, we understand that, or if we don't understand it when we go into a business, we quickly learn that, you're not just running a business, you're not just working in it, whatever that craft be, whether it be, a photographer or, a Pilates instructor, a personal trainer, you're soon a marketing. You may not be an expert, but you got to work on the marketing. You do everything, don't you? As a business. With you've done that. But in the same time, you've got your family. So, you're not and I'm not saying this in disrespect to anyone, but, you're not 17, 18 years old with no cares in the world, fresh out of school or college or uni. You've got a growing family. How do you juggle that with growing the business? How did you and how are you currently juggling those things?
Still juggling. Now, being a mum of three babies in 4 years.
That 3 babies, like, if you try and place it in regards to like, you had this many studios and you had a baby.
Oh gosh, yeah. Jess. Yeah. Jess, who's been with me since Loughborough, so my longest standing, kind of member in head office. She's brilliant, but she kind of said, Hol, for every 3 studios you launch, you have a baby.
There you go.
That's it now. There's no more babies on the cards.
But more studios, maybe.
More studios, maybe, but babies are definitely 3 is, it's chaos. It's beautiful chaos. It's loud.
I did interrupt you. I apologise for that. I just wanted to get that whole thing of like, you know, the babies in the studios have interlinked. I think that's a big part of the brand because you've always included that in your content. I think whenever we've come and done shoots, you know, the family's always been present, you know, and it isn't always, you know, perfect. It's authentic. You know, we've been trying to shoot content and we've got babies screaming, you know, down mics and stuff like that. But that's a part of definitely your personal brand. And I think your personal brand has it's kind of seemed quite nice with the Reformer Studio brand as well. I think you've kind of got that balance in there where people know what the Reformer Studio is, but then they're starting to see who the woman is behind that as well. Just understanding that kind of balance and how you've done it, I think it's impressive, but I'd just love to know how you've managed it and what you've taken from it really.
I'm still learning. It's been learning in terms of my oldest going to school and then the middle one going to preschool. School hours are not the same as nursery hours. How does that look? What happens when you throw a newborn into the mix? Juggling it around my husband's career and his work is also very challenging. It's just full on, and I think you need to be organised and logistics. We still don't have a shared calendar. Definitely need to get on that one. But like you said, the family and the brand, it's got to come together because you can separate it, but it's so much of your life that's integrated. And I went to an event in London this week, and I've always spoken about a work-life balance. And this lady on stage said, there is no such thing as a work-life balance. It's a work-life blend. And I'm going to coin that for this year or this season. I'm kind of leaning into different seasons at the minute. For the past few months, it's kind of been my newborn bubble. Now I'm ramping up, getting ready to come back in February full time and take on different responsibilities and explore different areas. But when we first met, I was heavily pregnant, about to launch Love for a Studio, and my daughter was there. We've got some beautiful pictures that you took that are actually in my house, and I just look at them so fondly. And you've been there when I've announced that, you know, I feel that you've been there on that journey as well, and you've been there capturing it. It was this time last year, I think we actually announced at the launch of Market Harbour that we were expecting a third. And I've got a new business launching in less than a week. And I said to my daughter, I said, will you come to Mummy's new work party? And she said, is there a ribbon to cut, Mummy? I said, there is. Let me see if you're allowed to cut it. Because, you know, she cut it at Wonder, at the launch of Wonder, which was so lovely for her to come and to be involved. And we'll walk past all the different studios, and my daughter and my son be like, oh, Mummy's work. They go on to the Reformer. They know how to take the springs off. You know, they've been reforming with me since they were in my tummy, and then going to the postnatal classes. And, you know, my youngest, he's 6 months next week. He's been in board meetings. He's been on studio shoots. He was 7 days old when we were in Manchester together filming the promo video. He was 2 weeks old when we launched Manchester. And so life doesn't stop. You've got to keep rolling.
One thing that we haven't discussed, is, your other half, Echo, your husband. I'm not going to introduce Echo other than say he's a professional boxer. The reason why I'm not going to do it, because there's a lot of titles there and I won't do it any justice. So if you want to kind of explain.
Don't put me on the spot.
Yeah. I'm leaving it to you because I looked at it last night. I will not remember those. Yeah, I don't expect you to remember all of them because there's a lot in there. But if you just want to introduce Echo, what does he do? Who is he? The successes he's had. And then that will really help me.
So Echo the Engine Essuman is a professional boxer. He has won the British title outright 4 times. There's only 1 or 2 people to have ever done that. He is WBO, WBA, Gold and International. There's so many accolades, there's so many belts that we've got 7 belts at home.
Yeah, we'll list it in the captions. I think that's probably going to be easier.
We'll list it.
And it's constantly changing as well. So.
And then, I feel this year is, world title is on the horizon.
How does that fit your family? Because I know from speaking to you, obviously, I know Echo. I'm not into boxing as most of your probably family and friends are, but it's because I know Echo, I keep an eye when he's fighting, his training. I filmed his training as well, which was I felt
ferocious.
Yeah, I mean, I felt tired just filming it. It was crazy. How does that fit with everything? Not just business, because I know he plays an active role in the businesses as well, but managing the family. He's often in training camps. How does that all come together? I
feel we've got better at it. There's training camp it's intense. Now it's intense for Echo because obviously he moves out of the family home. He kind of steps back and puts absolutely everything into his training. I mean, I'm sitting here, obviously postpartum, I can get emotional about it because, my husband, Echo, he inspires me every single day, and he has since the first time I ever spoke to him before kind of, a relationship and marriage kind of transpired. So, I always, people say, oh, how are you getting on when Echo's in camp? But actually, I think it's definitely a two-way thing. And I'm not the one who's going through, the grueling camp and cutting weight and not being able to sleep and, training 2-3 times a day. It's what he does is madness. I stay in my lane and I'm there to support as a wife and a mother and I look after the children, and it's tough because I have to find that balance. For me, also working out is really important for kind of me, my mental health, my clarity, feeling good. So to kind of juggle 3 children, and he was in camp, I think, our youngest was a week or 2 old. He was in camp. He does come home at weekends, which is so lovely, but it's then, it's just the logistics, and I feel more, I just go. I don't sit still. If you sit still, you get tired. You can't ever sit still. But it's probably just that emotional support, not being there as a family unit throughout that time. He's a hands-on dad as well. And it's so nice after the fights to spend quality family time together.
Yeah. Obviously, he's there at every studio launch as well, isn't he? So
he's in every promo video.
Not that everyone's going to hit his standards, I don't think, on a fly. Some of the stuff he does on a carriage is scary. I don't think we'll be setting unrealistic expectations, I think, with some people to do it. You've obviously got a view into both worlds, the world as a business owner, multiple studios with 2 different brands. And you've also got an eye into being an elite athlete, or the life of an elite athlete. Would you draw any parallels between the two? What kind of, learnings do you take from either? Is there anything that's similar? You think, well, actually that we apply that in the business, and likewise, we take that from the business into the performance as an athlete.
Both is relentless. Both you have to be at your best. He has high standards. I have high standards. For an athlete, especially during boxing, it's the discipline and it's the fitness, but then it's also the mindset. It's the breath work. It's so many things marry together. Echo started using, hot cold therapy. I've started integrating that into my practice, and I feel that gives me such mental clarity and focus to be able to get on with my day, my week, my schedule block, however that looks. I feel there are lots of parallels. It's probably just keeping each other inspired and being there to support each other, because, you have down days, and it's just acknowledging that. And, tomorrow's a new day. We manifest a lot. The way that we talk in our house is not if, it's when. And even with our children, they kind of like, we have who are we, the Essumans? What are we? Strong. And that's ingrained in my children every day. They're kind of, we're the Essumans, we're strong, we can achieve this.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
And there's no ceiling. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve. I think my husband's proved that. We're not even there yet. We've only just started this journey.
And I'm going to get him on this podcast as well. I think that's definitely going to have to happen. Pulling it back, I suppose, into the business, understanding that you've got your business brand and you've got your personal brand. I know the personal brand is, it's a term that we hear going around a lot. What's people's personal brand? It's just you. For me, it's just who are you? Like you just said, we're the Essumans. We're strong. So that's your family brand, and you'll fit within that. And I've been working with you from a content point of view from the second kind of opening of the studio. How would you say, like, content in, whether that be professional content or user generated content, the content that you've kind of done yourself, how would you say it's supported, like, the growth of your brands and potentially the trust between your brand and your service users?
It's a story, isn't it? And people need to believe in you, to come on that journey with you, to feel part of something, the communication, the education, staying on trends, creating trends. Within the Reformer Studio, we have so many different clients. You've got your students, you've got your young professionals, you've got, I don't know, am I middle-aged? I don't know. I don't even know kind of how, these generations.
You don't need to do the gentle one just yet.
I feel like it some days. So it's making sure that you can appeal to all of these different personalities, personas. I'll hold my hands up. I've not got TikTok. I'm not a TikToker. So my new business partners laugh at how un-TikTok I am, if that's even a word. I've started to look at creating my own reels recently. So that's a new step for me, but that's a whole different game. TikTok, off the top of my head, you're meant to be posting 4 times a day? 4 times a day? Probably you're going to sit there and tell me more. But I think the social content, you have your social content, but then it is recreating these trends to link with the music, to link with the hashtag or whatever is trending today, which probably won't be trending tomorrow, to stay ahead.
Is there anything you wish with content that you would have maybe started sooner if you knew the impact it had now?
I think we've always been very, very good on Instagram. That was kind of new when we launched. TikTok, we're getting there. I'd have liked to have documented the journey probably more. More, as you say, from a founder personal brand. I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of founder generated podcasts that inspire me. And I've always had this toss up because although my husband is in the public eye, although, we have these businesses, we're very private people. We keep our circle really small. And I feel you need to do that because we don't have much energy to give out. But it's trust, our friends are our family. And so it's that line, how much do we want to kind of go into the public eye? How much do we want to give away? But then I'd love to inspire. I'd love, if one person said to me, you've inspired me to open my business. You've inspired me to come back to work after having my children. Having children doesn't stop me achieving my dreams. It's not one or the other. Yeah, you've got, as I mentioned earlier, seasons, and I've acknowledged to lean into these seasons. I think women absolutely can have everything, but at different times. So I think if I'd have documented that, and it's not over because, Wonder just launched. It's 6 months. It's not even 6 months. And I've got lots of other projects and things in the pipeline. So it's not too late to start, but I feel, going back to the journey, and I met my husband through the studio. Everything has happened through the studio, which is, kind of, it is my family. It's the community. It's my first baby.
You said obviously the content you produce, it's like your story. It's your footprint. It's a way in which your audience, your service users, your future employees, that they can learn about what the Reformer Studio is, understand what the culture is, and build trust. What type of content would you say has been the biggest impact for your brand to get where it is today?
Building the community, being honest, integrity, being creative. And although I spoke about trends earlier, and it is trend-led now, that wasn't the start of our story. So I think just kind of underpinning that and just showing that although the business is big now, it's a company, right? We've probably got nearly 100 instructors. It's crazy. But it's still very much me and my team at the forefront. It's still me championing the way. It's not become corporate. So I think having that there and knowing that it's still very personal probably helps with the brand, the storytelling, the digital marketing and things.
So I'm going to go into just real 3 quick questions.
Okay.
A little bit of reflection and a little bit of hopefully a bit of advice for, I think there are a few people that are going to be really interested in listening to this podcast. So, one lesson you weren't prepared for.
It's very, very difficult to trust somebody with your business, to trust that so many different ways. But being able to flip that and see a positive side, or how you can build, how you can switch your mindset. I've become very resilient over the years. The brand is personal, right? So if somebody breaks that trust, it hurts. It's like a dagger in the heart. So just building that resilience, but understanding it's not personal, it's business. Yeah. So although I talk about the brand as my baby, it is a business at the end of the day, right? It's bricks and mortar, it's profit and loss sheets. That's kind of, how you have to look at it. If
you could look back of Holly, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, before she embarked on this journey, what advice would you give your younger, earlier self? I shouldn't say younger, sounds bad. What advice would you give your earlier self?
To probably believe in yourself more and don't downplay what you've achieved. And I have only learnt this probably in the past 5 days. So when I went to this event in London, it was Rochelle Humes. She launched a podcast, Ladies That Launch, a year ago. And I've listened to it religiously. She's had some incredible guests, and she did her first live audience. And I was like, okay, what's all this going to be about? So I was lucky enough to get tickets. It was at the town hall at King's Cross. It was a fantastic event, and she had some incredible speakers. And she had her life coach, Dior, there. And Dior wanted kind of interaction throughout the audience. And she asked the audience what their goal for this year was. And I do not know what came across me, but I stood up and I had a microphone flung in my hands. And I was like, okay, well, this is scary. My goal for this year is to become the UK's leading educator for Pilates. And then later she kind of said, okay, well, what's standing in your way to achieving that? And I thought, I'm standing in my way to achieve that. I'm downplaying what I have achieved because we are there. Whether we're number one, but we are up there with being the UK's number one education provider. So actually what I do want to achieve is I'm going to take this international, and the School of Reform is going to be recognised internationally before the end of Q2 this year. So if I had advice for a younger me, it's not to believe in me more, because I've always had that drive, but maybe to have a little bit more confidence in what I have achieved and to shout about it a little bit more, hopefully to inspire, not from a egotistic way, but you can do this.
What one piece of advice would you give for anyone looking to build a brand in a competitive market?
Just to believe in you and believe in your brand, and to do it authentically.
Closing question.
Okay, you said there was three.
Yeah, no, this is that. They were the three.
Bonus.
This is the bonus question. How do you feel about where you are today?
Happy, content. Yeah, I look at my family and I'm like, it's a dream, right? I kind of sometimes sit in the garden and look in on the house and I'm like, this all seems a dream, but it's not. You know, we're not lucky. We've worked damn hard to get to where we are. Business is always going to throw challenges at you, but I'm excited about the future. Last year was the year of the snake. Last year was our biggest year to date, personally, through the business. This is the year of the horse. You know, it's time to shed that skin and let's kind of gallop into the future, and it's exciting.
Holly, massive thank you for taking the time out today, to come and do this podcast. I know sometimes it can be a bit daunting. I've really enjoyed it. I think it's been a really good conversation. I'm hoping people get a lot out of that, and that will inspire them to chase their dreams, be brave, and push on in 2026 for themselves as well. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been nice to just sit and talk, because we don't have the opportunity. We're always kind of got a sheet and timings and things. So actually it's quite nice to sit and to reflect, and honoured to be your first guest.
Yeah, normally I'm instructing people how to use a Pilates.
Well, yeah, now you're the expert, aren't you? And it's like, take hair away from here, your bra straps hanging out from here, no flared leggings.
Big thanks for Holly for taking the time to come have a chat with me today. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you have too. If you have, make sure you like, share, follow, subscribe, all the usual stuff. So we'll see you on the next one.